Felicia Anderson, Director of Archives and History. The Baldwin County Commission feels it is important to honor and recognize the incredible heritage that we are a part of. Heritage is important in understanding the story of Baldwin County, in understanding our history, our identity, and in understanding our people. The title of this documentary is Baldwin County Heritage Families and consists of 4 segments using snippets of videos that provide an overview of the history of families that lived here more than 100 years ago. Now for part 2 of this 4-part series, Colonies.
The second part of Baldwin County Heritage Families highlights the communities founded as colonies: Silver Hill, Robertsdale, Colonia Italiana, and the Malbus Creek Plantation. Many people came to Baldwin County as part of a group of people or a colony. They came because there was a person who purposely created a community of people with similar backgrounds or nationalities. This person or company bought thousands of acres of land and marketed it particularly to the people of distinct cultures. The factor that makes this county unique has to do with the pockets of communities or colonies that remained somewhat isolated and maintain their heritage that they brought with them. One of those communities is Silver Hill.
Hello, my name is Pico Forsman. Well, legally it's Creighton Craig Forsman, but everybody calls me Pico. That was a handle given to me by my sister here when I was born. And it stuck, and I appreciate it because I can spell it easily. The other one, I was in 3rd grade before I learned how to spell it. But anyhow, I'm from Silver Hill. Silver Hill is originally a Swedish colony that was started in 1896. Some brochures say there was stuff going on there in 1890. It's kind of hard to be sure exactly, but we do know that the town itself actually started in 1896. A lot of brochures were sent out, advertisements into the Chicago area, the various Swedish communities like out in western Kansas and places like that. Brochures advertising the Silver Hill area as a wonderful place to live, just like our town motto says it's a good place to live. But back in those days, they were telling about all the good land that was available. They told about the good water that was available. There was all kinds of endorsements from different people. Some of them were pretty honest. Of course, you know, truth in advertising, these people are from the Svea Land Company trying to sell land there, which they did, and they told very well about the area. Every once in a while they might have stretched the truth a little bit. For example, in one of the brochures that we have, it talks about that the temperature hardly ever got above 90 degrees, but you had to watch real careful because it said in the shade. So a lot of people may have missed that, I don't know, but I thought that was funny. And there was a doctor who had an endorsement for the area. Let me read this to you, if I can find it. I think it's absolutely hilarious. This was a Dr. Goodman. He said, in those elevated portions of Baldwin County, the death rate is so low that were it not for the natural termination of senectitude, the population would be almost perpetual. Which simply says that if we didn't die of old age, we'd be still living. You know, I think that's hilarious. Well, anyhow, how about my family? Well, they came from Sweden, but they didn't come directly to Alabama. They transitioned through Rockford, Illinois, and then out to Decatur County, which is about and lived about 18 miles south, a little bit west of Oberlin, Kansas. They were farmers out there back in the 1890 area, 1882 area rather. And they had farms of 160 acres, and they were trying to make a living growing corn or whatever all they had to grow out there. And that's tough land if you've ever been there. It's beautiful, flat prairie land, but it was hard to make a living. And so down through the years, these advertisements going for Silver Hill and what a beautiful place it was, it being a Swedish community, they got the word of that and decided that maybe this is where they ought to come and give it a try. And so our great-grandfather, our great-grandfather, O.P. Forsman, he came here and did a little bit of a survey around, and in best we can tell from the stories told by some of the children, they actually arrived in Silver Hill on Christmas Eve of 1903. There's the family and 10 kids came from Kansas. And then their great-grandfather, father of O.P. Forsman, Per Eric Forsman, he came along. He was single. His wife had died in Sweden, and he had gone out to Kansas also. And he came to Silver Hill to try a new life. And there, of course, both of them are buried in the Silver Hill Cemetery. When they came, here we have 10 kids now. Things are pretty busy, and you got to work. You got to make money. And Silver Hill was a good agricultural area, and the kids did all kinds of things. For example, one of the boys, he went to work with a man by the name of Charles Lyrane, and he was just a young man, but he worked on the end of a crosscut saw with him, cutting wood. That's what he did. And the others found various jobs. Great-grandfather, he became a farmer. His great-grandmother said one time that he would disappear with a horse in a wagon or a buggy or something. He'd disappear, and he wouldn't come back and and she told one of the kids one time that if he quit talking, maybe we'd get something done around here, you know. But yeah, I found in the old Fairhope Courier I was reading, and there was an article in there about farmers in Silver Hill, and that he was one of the more prosperous farmers in Baldwin County by the 1920s. So they worked hard. They were a very industrious group, like everyone in Silver Hill. It was noted also that I thought this was very curious, in the Courier, E.B. Gaston wrote about the farmers in the Silver Hill area and their incredible honesty, how they looked out for each other. Nobody stole the other guy's equipment out of the field. Nobody stole any grain or seed or anything from anyone else, because everybody knew that it took all of them working together to make that happen and to make life good. Now, as time went on, the children grew, and most of them scattered about. They went to Chicago. People went all over the place. Some of them stayed there and worked little farms in Silver Hill. There was a Peter Forsman, which was one of the children. He had a farm, and he grew truck stuff like cucumbers was big, strawberries were big, things like that. And he died, if I recall right, he died picking cucumbers with a heart attack. And his family, Gilbert, their son Edward Gilbert, and his mother moved away in about 1940. And Gilbert was one of the first casualties in the Pacific. He was a Marine and was shot and killed on one of the islands and is buried in Hawaii at this point. But anyhow, the rest of them, there was all kinds of kids and all kinds of cousins and first cousins, and that you know, we had a lot of family reunions with a lot of people down through the years. Even today, we still have a fairly close family of second and third cousins that we'll eventually or occasionally get together and renew our acquaintances, because it's pretty hard when people kind of scatter about. But in the early days, my immediate family, my dad, my grandmother, or my dad, my grandfather, they were farmers, growing whatever crops were the thing to grow. My dad was a dairy farmer when he came out back from the Second World War up until the mid-50s. Then he became a carpenter and eventually a cabinet maker. My grandfather, he was a farmer, and then he and a friend of his started building houses together, and he bought and sold land. He did that, and before he died. Most of the other children had moved away. Some of them moved down into Florida, some to Chicago, and so on, and most everybody became quite prosperous. But it was because, I think, of the work ethic that they learned in Silver Hill, trying to make a living out of some sandy soil and doing what needed to be done. When I was a little boy, and my sister and I, we grew up there in town, it was interesting. We were talking about this on the way down here. It was interesting to listen to the people talk. You know, you hear my grandparents, and they had this Swedish brogue that they had. And then we had our Czechoslovakian Bohemian friends who had a Czech accent, I guess, as you want to say it. But anyhow, the Swedes and the older ones that we knew, and there were so many of them, when we were little, we knew everybody who walked the street. We did, because Silver Hill, even at its biggest back in those days, might have had maybe 300 people or something in it. Interesting thing, the Baptist church in Silver Hill started out as a Swedish Baptist church. It changed to Southern Baptist in early 50s, if I remember right, and that went away. Our church, the Covenant Church, was a Swedish church broke off from the Swedish Lutheran back in the 1890s, and it's still there. And we, I don't know for sure about the Baptists, but I know that our church didn't change to English until 1933. And so that heritage was strong. Well, you know, nowadays, you can tell that it's a Scandinavian, or was a Scandinavian town, because of the flags. Occasionally you'll see a Swedish flag out when we have Heritage Day, and as well as the Czech and so on flags out. But most of the old Swedes are gone. Unfortunately, it's come down to people like me and my sister and a few others that have become our own grandparents, and we are the Swedes. Not many left, and I think it will eventually, I hate to say it, but I think eventually it's going to lose that Scandinavian heritage and identity, as it already is, because we're becoming much more, what's the word, cosmopolitan. I mean, we have all kinds of good folks living there now, which is fine. One of the interesting things that I think about, I owned for a while, my wife and I owned what is now the United Bank in Silver Hill, this old country store that had started in about 1902. And one day, we had a lot of good times in there, and one day there was a man by the name, I think his last name was Domo, a black man from Daphne, who had worked with one of the contractors in Silver Hill. Really nice guy, and we were sitting around, he was in there talking, and we were chatting, and he had worked with a contractor there by the name of Sam Brumfield for who knows how long. And we were talking about the Swedes and the Czechs and all of that. And he said something that just almost laid me out on the floor. I thought was so funny, but he was absolutely serious. And he said the Swedes were pretty good folks until they started mixed marrying with the white folks. And I don't know what he meant by that, but I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But you know, if we can keep the identity of the town just by stories, that's fine. You don't have to have a lot of Swedes to do that. But I think that the identity is eventually going to be a thing of history there. I'm sorry to say that, but I do, because that's just the nature of things. And in fact, very much Swedish, and then very much Czechoslovakian or Bohemian, because for a long, long time, that was essentially it.
Europe of 1900 was very different from the map of today. Most people of Eastern Europe identified with their family heritage and cultural backgrounds rather than with a nationality. The Bohemian people were one of those groups that were ruled by the Austrian-Hungary Empire. Prior to World War I, the turmoil and unrest in that part of the world led many Eastern Europeans to immigrate to America. Some of those found their way to Baldwin County.
Good morning. I'm Frankie Kuchera. I live in Silver Hill. I'm of Czech descent. My parents are from Czech descent. My grandparents all came here from Czechoslovakia, including my mother. She came here and all, but they came from Czechoslovakia. My mother came from Moravia, and my parents, my father's parents, they came from a different part of Czechoslovakia. Kucheras settled in Dillonville, Ohio, and both grandparents and my father, they worked in the coal mines there and everything, and they really struggled in that area to make a living and then they heard about the good land in Silver Hill for farming and all. And so my grandfather decided he would give it a shot, so they moved to Silver Hill and bought some farmland. They had to clear the land and everything. So they got their land, they got established and everything, and was doing good with it. My mother's parents came from over there, and they moved into Wichita Falls, Texas when they came to the United States. And so they were sharecroppers in Wichita Falls, Texas. But then Grandpa read an article in the paper that read this: no winters, cool summers, moderate by the salt sea breezes, no fevers, no contagious diseases, 200 feet above tide water, fertile soil, exhaustible supply of pure freestone water, good markets, good railroad facilities, all conveniences of a large city. And here's when he decided that he would come to Baldwin County and check this out. So he did, him and two of his sons. They came here, they checked it out, and they went back to Texas, and then they moved here and bought land and cleared it. They lived in a tent for a number of years while they cleared the land and got established there. And all the timber that they cut was used to build their new home and that timber was cut at Heidelberg Sawmill, which is just out of Silver Hill, a little ways out in the country. As a matter of fact, that machine that cut the sawmill, the wood, is here today at the memorial, at the Heritage Museum. It's the Titan steam engine that they have here. But both grandparents, they've got into farming. My parents farmed a while, and everything. My dad was Bedrick Kuchera, and after a while, he was asked to become a deputy sheriff here in Baldwin County by, at that time, Sheriff Ramsey Stewart. And the reason was that there was so many Czechs that had settled into South Baldwin area that they needed someone that could communicate with them, because most of those people only spoke Czech. And so my dad, he could speak English real good, so he became a deputy sheriff. And he worked the south end of the county, you know, and everything. And then later on, he went to work for the Alabama ABC Board, which was a different type of job, but it was still law enforcement. And then he went to work as a chief of police in Robertsdale, and he served there for a number of years. And then when Emory Johnson died in Silver Hill, he was the mayor. They asked my dad to come take the mayorship over in Silver Hill. And so he done that. He was also still the deputy and a marshal and all and everything there. So my dad served as chief of police in Robertsville and the mayor of Silver Hill, and also as a law enforcement officer. And so he stayed with that for a number of years. I think back in '72 he retired, 1972. So my mother, talk about my mother some, she raising the family, but she also started helping at the Silver Hill School, you know, and she had like an 8th grade education, you know, but she helped at the Silver Hill School. They done the Silver Hill PTA Founders Day. She helped with that and all and everything, but she was very involved in what was going on in Silver Hill. But in the earlier years, her and my dad both were involved in the civil defense. They had joined the Civil Air Patrol, which was something that they'd done to kind of help protect this part of the county. My dad also flew with a man from Gulf Shores, George Sally, and they had an airplane and they would fly the coast looking for stuff that could be happening over that. That's in the 40s. And also, anyway, they took and was in all of that kind of stuff too, involved in everything that, you know, over the years to take and make this place safe. My mama was an aircraft observer. She took, and her and a number of ladies in Silver Hill, we had a little building there, and I was just a kid. They had a little building there, and they would spot airplanes. This was before radar. And they would spot these airplanes, and they'd have to call us into Brookley Field and tell them what plane was coming through. And they had pictures of all these different planes and that they would see, that they could spot, you know, and everything. They had one of them aircraft observer places in Alberta and one in Stapleton also. So, like I said, there was a lot that my parents was involved in, but they weren't involved in farming. After they got away from the farm, they stayed away from that, because there's too many other things they was involved in to help do here in the county, you know, and everything. They were involved with the Little Hall and also the PZK Hall. They helped build both of those, the grandparents, you know, and everything. So that has been a part of our life, those two halls. And the PZK is Pauczny Zabawy Kroczek, and that's in Czech, and that means Educational Recreational Center. So I'm proud to have that in my background, both of them buildings and all. And we took and just saved the Little Hall from getting tore down after a tornado hit it in 2011 in Silver Hill. And so we've got that part of our history, our Czech history, saved, and it's also being used now as a community center in Silver Hill. So we've taken, put a lot of pride in that, and a lot of Czechs came together. For that part, when it got hit, the town was going to tear it down, and the Czechs found out about it, so we went to a council meeting. And we talked to them at the council meeting, and they said, well, you're going to have to show us something what you can do. So we had a meeting, and they wanted me to head it up. So I told them, I said, I'll do it with the help of a lot of other people. And so we were talking about what we could do. And so I just told them, I said, I sent a notebook around. I said, pledge which you can put together in money that we can get pledged to help save this building. And so that particular evening, we had $10,000 in pledges. So when we handed that to the council, Dave just took and got really interested in what we could do. So we saved the building. We raised $52,000 to do that. And I'm proud of that part right there. We've done something really good to save our history. So it was originally out in the country on County Road 48. And I called it out in the Fiddler area because that's the people that live out in that area. But it was originally there, and it was built as a school, and then it became a community center, and they would have dances and stuff like that out there on Saturday nights and all and everything. All of us young people went out there. My mother and father had their wedding reception there. And this was 1928. So, like I said, the building has a lot of history and all and everything. So then it was given by the Ladies' Home Demonstration, it was given to the Silver Hill School, and it became a classroom and a band room. And then they were going to build a gym, so they had to do something with the building, so they in turn donated it to the town of Silver Hill, and it's still there on the town property and all. So it had to be changed and moved to a different address because the town had done built a new building and all. So when we got it saved, and it had to have a new address, so we changed it and turned it to another street. And the PCK Hall now belongs to the town of Robertsdale, and they've really done some real nice stuff with it too. We're proud of what they got done with it. For Heritage Day, for instance, and that was started when I was mayor, and we were trying to raise money for the fire department, and kind of taking a little something from Alberta here, and but we got together and we put Heritage Day together, and that, I'm gonna tell you what, for the first few years, that was a big event. And all the Czechs and the Swedes and the Norwegians got together and celebrated their heritage. And it was a lot of fun. I had some buddies that even built a Viking ship, and they were celebrating the Norwegian heritage, and all. So, and they had that in the parade. We had a big parade and all and everything. So, and we raised quite a bit of money for the fire department at that time.
A large area in Bell Forest near Daphne was purchased by Alessandro Valerio in 1888. He marketed the farmland to Italian immigrants. The colony was one of the most successful in the county. Descendants are many. One is the Honorable Tim Russell.
I'm Tim Russell, and I'm a proud member of the Italian colony of Daphne, Alabama. I've enjoyed that heritage all of my life, and it's just been such a rich heritage. It's just been such a vital part of my life and my family, and my wife, who's not Italian, has enjoyed her relationship in the Italian family, and my 3 children enjoy it immensely, 2 of which live away from here now, but one lives in Baldwin County with his 2 sons, which are carrying on that tradition. The Bertinelli family and the Pedazra family were 2 of the early Italian colony families that moved to Daphne. Both of our families, I'm Bertinelli and Pedazra, moved in 1898 from Illinois. It's really interesting because the heritage that we trace back goes to the province of Trentino. The Trentino province in Italy, when they were in the early part of our family, was part of Austria. And then after World War I, that part of Trentino, the state of Trentino, was ceded over to Italy. And so now is part of Italy, and has been a part of Italy since World War I. It's a beautiful, beautiful countryside. I've not been there. It has beautiful mountains. It's where The Sound of Music was filmed. I plan to go there soon. But my families that came to the Italian colony of Daphne were both predominantly farm families, and to this day I'm proud to say that members of both families are still farming. We still have parts of our family farm. We rent it out though, because I'm busy being a probate judge and don't have time to farm. I wish I did have time to farm, but I can't. But we still have part of that farm that followed those families down for over 100 years now. So it's very special to us. But it was interesting, of the Bertinelli family, the Pedazra came from a marriage that resulted from Bertinelli and the Pedazras, and then 3 Pedazra siblings, girls, married 3 Russell boys who were all from Indiana and originally from the great country of England, settled in the state of Massachusetts in the early 1600s and worked their way down to Alabama. They married 3 girls, married 3 boys. And so that's why I have triple cousins all over Baldwin County to this day. And when I tell people about triple cousins, they don't understand, they don't know what I'm talking about. And I understand, because it gets real complex. But that brings the family even closer together when you have triple cousins. And we've enjoyed that heritage for so long. And most of it stayed in the immediate Daphne area and in the city limits of Daphne. But my particular part of the family on the Russell side, because my father had a sawmill and a farm, there wasn't room at that time for a sawmill and a farm. And the sawmill was quite large, had a steam power plant, and there was a lot of steam exposure and stuff like that, so you needed to be in the real rural country. So I grew up actually in Magnolia Springs, but every weekend growing up, we would go to the Italian dinners and often to church at Christ the King. Our family, by the way, our families formed Christ the King, a Catholic church. It was started off as the Church of the Assumption. And one of my great uncles actually built the second church, and that building is still there today. The new church building is there with about 6,500 members. So it's grown a lot from those families when they were just a few family members when they started in the late 1800s. And by the way, that church, besides being there, has a beautiful cemetery on County Road 64 in Bell Forest that we maintain. And in that cemetery, I have over 150 relatives buried in that cemetery. I have 2 sets of great-grandparents in there and 2 sets of grandparents in there. So I'm a really, really special connection to that cemetery. But we settled right in the heart of Daphne, and the old Bertinelli store, which would have been my great-great-uncle, in which the store was on the first floor and they lived on the second floor. That's been restored. It's out of the family now, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the oldest buildings still left in the city of Daphne. And then catty-cornered to Christ the King School, which was started by our family members and Christ the King Church. And then a little bit to the south, as a part of the Russell family, where Russell Motor Company was when I was a little boy, and actually started in 1908. And that great uncle of mine was married to one of the 3 Bertinelli girls, and his family has stayed there, and they still own it. And there's a frame shop in there now. So that heritage just stayed on and on. But because the families were so close and had that Italian connection together, they often married among the Italians. So I have Italian cousins that are very involved in the families of the Lazzaris, the Triones, the Cordis, the Bartolas, the Bertinellis, of course. Later Bertinellis married Bertinellis as they came way down, and Gariscos. So that's why I have so many cousins there. I jokingly say the only reason I was elected judge of probate is I had so many cousins that lived in the Italian community, felt sorry for me. They all got together and voted for me so they'd have a cousin that had a job in Baldwin County. But our heritage has been so special to me. We've had some tragedies that occurred in our family. One of the early tragedies was one of my cousins who was a star football player on the Fairhope football team that went to the Bay site in Daphne, Mobile Bay. They always swam at after practice, and he dove in one day and was paralyzed from the neck down. Johnny Tryon, who was Al Tryon's son, and I remember going to see him as a boy. He was in a ventilator. They didn't have they didn't have ventilators then. They had the iron lung, and for 10 years he lived in that iron lung and learned to paint with his mouth. And his paintings are all over now. One is in the state capitol that we're proud of. Governor Albert Brewer's picture was painted by my cousin. We also have another cousin today, one of the Tryons, who's a blind artist, which is interesting, and he's painted a lot of the land scenes and landscapes of Baldwin County and the Italian community. But our families continue to thrive there. They continue to do well. Interestingly enough, a lot of them are moving out of farming because the value of land is going so much. And recently, part of the Pedazra farm, which the name is no longer there, is now Wingfoot subdivision, and they named the main entrance into that the Pedazra Boulevard, which made us so happy. We have the Tryon Park and the Pedazra Boulevard, and some things are named after the Russells and the Burton-Ollies. It's been very nice that people and the city leaders have recognized our families. But we have so much to be thankful for. We're very close. We've maintained an organization called Circolo Trentino, which is Club of Trent. There are actually 26 chapters in the United States, largest one being in the Chicago area, in which the Italian immigrants stay close and have dinners and social things and get together. I'm sorry to say that our club in Baldwin County is in limbo right now, but my generation is ready to get it going again, and we hope to do that real soon. But that's a kind of a short summary of the Italians in Baldwin County and Daphne, Alabama.
Jason Malbus founded a colony for Greek immigrants near the Eastern Shore. It became one of the most prominent business operations in Baldwin and Mobile counties.
My name is Antonia Kleandis. I was born in Athens, Greece. Our family came to America. My mother, father, and brother and sister came to America in 1954. Greece was at the time after war struggles and fear of communism. So my father had an inclination to come to America for a better life for us. He wanted to go to Detroit, where his elderly brothers, had started a business and take over that. But my mother said, if I have to leave my beloved country, and we had some beautiful family there and relatives and good times, I will meet you halfway and go to Daphne, Alabama, where I'm familiar with the Malbus plantation. Of course, the reason is that she was the niece of Jason Malbus. Her mother was his sister. She loved him very much because she spent time with him. He had come to Greece after he established his enterprises in the United States. He came back in 1933 and lived with his sister and my mother, who was yet single, at the house, and she learned a lot from him. His early beginnings were entering the monastery. I believe he must have been interested in education mostly, and his religious side also was strong. So the best schooling at the time, living in a small town in Doumena, Greece, in Peloponnesus area, was to enter the monastery, where he got a good education and the religious side too. In the monastery, you pray and you do things which are important, but he really wanted to create. He came to America, first started in New York, Chicago, met some Greek entrepreneur businessmen, which he needed to meet, and bankers to borrow money and establish his dream. He told the people in Chicago, when immigrants passed through here, some of them stayed in New York and Chicago, earning $1 a day with building the railroad system, eating a mustard sandwich. And really, there was racism at the time for foreigners. So it was difficult. So he told the friends in Chicago, tell them that they can come to Malbus Plantation, and we will create this family living and refuge. So it was really a haven for them. So the way he started selecting the area to build the plantation was traveling all the way down through Oklahoma, Texas, ended up at Bienville Square in Mobile. And he and his friend, William Papa George, were really a little bit dismayed. They had been doing odd jobs on the way traveling down to survive, and they were feeling dismayed until his eyes were caught by this sign that said, farm acres for sale across the bay. They were like $5 an acre. So they took the ferry boat and went across the bay, and they met one of the few families living at the time in that area, the Weasels, and he bought a few acres. These immigrants came down, as they were told there was a haven there for them, and they became a self-productive plantation. Each one had a talent, so they had the nursery, a beautiful nursery building with 100 different varieties of camellias and other flowers, and some other immigrant had a talent for, they also had the canning factory and sent cans through Bay Minette with the railroad system all over the country. Started a small bakery. The first bakery was really in Daphne, very small, and a dairy. Actually, the arcade building, which is on 181, it's a twin building with the round balls in the center, was the quarters of the canning factory. So we still have that in preservation. So there were many enterprises, but as he grew and more followers came, so these people had a choice, really. He told them that we will study the Bible, we will have Bible class. Of course, they were Christian, Greek Orthodox. We'll have the religious part and then the hard work to create. And he wanted to, which is still existing, the Malbus Memorial Foundation, which still exists today and helps many charities. They had camaraderie, they sang and danced, and next day studied the Bible. So it was a mixture of quality of life. They worked hard. He worked right along with them. He was very humble. There was a large home needed to be built, and it was started in 1909. What we refer to as the big house or the pink house. It was always painted pink with the two porches upstairs and downstairs. So it's a significant part of Baldwin County, and people ask, what was it all about? And all these people, most of them lived in the big house, but there were other dwellings too, like the person that took care of the dairy had his own house, and the dairy house still stands. And the Mr. Emmanuel, who was the entrepreneur for the nursery, he lived at the nursery building. Then when the bakery was moved to Mobile, the large bakery, there were other dwellings there for the people that worked at the bakery. But the big house was the gathering place for holidays and people that came from out of town. Now, there were also people that came from the state and asked for land to be donated for Highway 90 to be, so Jason Malbus gave some of that land for Highway 90. Now, in the years after that, there were also, although these people had not married, there were the little girls in the family. One of the followers, one of the immigrants that had come, had a brother in Greece already married with a family and with poor conditions after the war. So Jason Malbus accepted them as a family, and they lived in the big house as well as Jason Malbus and Antigone, Papa George, and Nefsika Mallers, and a few of the others. The years were good. He went back to Greece in 1933 to visit his relatives, his elderly sister, my grandmother, and the war broke out. Now, the leader of Greece, Metaxas, at the time, spoke to him and said, "You can leave. You're an American citizen. I will make sure you leave." And he said, "No, I want to stay to help my people of Greece," with a tear in his eye. Now, how did he help? He had an olive oil refinery. And so olive oil was really medication at the time, because when you're under famine conditions and you're not getting food in your stomach, you have swelling and irritation. So a little olive oil helped to soothe your stomach, to cook what little you had, and just helped. And he would send my mother with a train with olive oil to his friends. He didn't sell it to them, he gave it to them, and he would give her cigarettes to give to the Germans who guarded the trains and didn't allow a lot of this. Malbus started with 12,000 acres as they grew. Today there's only 3,000 acres of land. A lot of it was sold just for the old folks to survive. There was a special home built for them as they got older, which we call the men's house. Unfortunately, it was torn down last year. But they each had care, personal care, so it took a lot of money, and they lived to be 90 years old. We are trying to rebuild again and preserve what history we do have. And Bowling County is just a wonderful county and has embraced all the nationalities that came there. I went to school in the 4th grade when we came from Greece, and I just loved everyone there. Mr. McGowan was the superintendent. He came himself to meet us at the school, and everybody was just so wonderful. And of course, the aunts and the uncles wanted my sister and I and my brothers not to marry and stay, and we were the few that were there to continue what we could continue. But we chose to marry, and I met James Kleandis, who was ordained later as a priest, Greek Orthodox priest, which tied into the community. Church was built, of course, as it was instructed by Jason Malbus on his last letter to the folks at Malbus that he wanted a church built in his memory. Now, he died in Greece. He got sick, became sick with colon cancer, At the time, they weren't sure what it was. He was getting very sick, and he wrote a letter which he never finished. It was half finished, giving instructions what to do. These things, one of the wishes he had was to do the church, to build a hospital, to build a school, orphanage. Some of these things didn't happen. Everything started collapsing after he died. So we hope we can preserve some of the history and its meaning. But what didn't die was his goal to help mankind, which he did.
Baldwin County really is a great place to live. Baldwin County is a place where people work to keep it the land of milk and honey. In Baldwin County, it's the home to newcomers and natives alike. Baldwin County is where we treasure our past and plan for our futures. We as a community share the responsibility to identify and preserve our history for future generations so that they will know what came before them. It is our hope that through this documentary, you reach out to others in your families to discover your heritage as well. Thank you for watching.